It was a chilly October evening in 2024 when I decided to escape the chaos of city life. Work had been relentless, and I craved silence and solitude. I found a cabin to rent through an app, tucked away by Blackwood Lake in the Adirondacks, New York. The photos showed a rustic wooden cabin surrounded by dense pines, the lake shimmering in the background. It looked perfect, remote, simple, exactly what I needed. I arrived late after driving hours on winding roads through dark forests. My GPS lost signal miles back, so I navigated using a crumpled paper map I found in the glove compartment. When the cabin finally appeared in my headlights, it felt like stepping into a movie. It stood alone by the lake, with fog rolling in from the water. The air was cold, smelling of damp earth, but there was something else, a faint, uneasy feeling, like I was being watched. Inside, the cabin was cozy but worn. The wooden floors creaked, and it smelled musty, like no one had stayed there in years. An old stone fireplace dominated the living room, and I lit a fire to chase away the chill. But the silence was oppressive. Outside, there were no crickets, no wind, just an unnatural stillness. In the middle of the night, I woke to a sound, a faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone gently knocking on the wall. It was coming from inside the cabin. I lay frozen in bed, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was the pipes or a branch against the roof. But the taps had a pattern, 3 short, 1 long. Over and over. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and crept through the cabin. The sound stopped, but when I reached the living room, I saw something that made my skin crawl. The fire was out, but the ashes had been disturbed, like someone had been digging through them. I tried to brush it off, blaming exhaustion or paranoia, and went back to bed. But then I heard it again, the tapping, closer now, coming from the wall right behind my head. It wasn't random. It felt deliberate, like someone was trying to communicate, or lure me. The next morning, I searched outside for signs, footprints, broken branches, anything. The ground was untouched. I checked the app where I'd booked the cabin, but the listing was gone. When I called the owner, it went to voicemail, just static crackling on the line. I decided to leave early, but as I packed, the tapping started again, this time from the floor beneath me. I bolted to my car, but when I turned the key, nothing happened. The engine was dead. Panic surged as I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw something, a shadow moving between the trees, too fast to be human. I locked the doors and sat there, breathing hard, as the fog thickened around the car. Then the tapping came again, from the roof of the car. 3 short, 1 long. I don't know how I got out of there. A passing driver eventually stopped and helped jumpstart my car. I sped away without looking back. But when I got home and unpacked, I found something that wasn't mine. A small, carved wooden figure covered in strange symbols, buried among my clothes. I threw it in the trash, but sometimes at night, I still hear it. 3 short taps, 1 long. And I swear, in the corner of my eye, I see that shadow, waiting.
I didn't want to walk home that night. I told myself I did. I even smiled at the bus driver when I stepped off. But the truth was, I'd been sitting warm and safe on that seat, scrolling my phone, and my body didn't want to leave that comfort. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hesitate to shut the bus door behind you, because it feels like you're locking yourself out of the world. The road stretched out ahead, 2 long bends before I'd reach my building. I've done it 100 times, but never like this. No cars passed, no wind in the trees. Even the sky looked wrong, heavy, low clouds that seemed closer than they should be. I started walking, slow. The first few minutes, I tried to focus on the crunch of gravel under my shoes, the familiar cracks in the sidewalk, but it wasn't enough to push away the thing I felt behind my ribs. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was the awareness. That tiny shift in how you hold yourself when you know someone might be seeing you. By the time I reached the first bend, it had settled in fully. The air felt charged, like the moment right before a storm, only warmer. I glanced over my shoulder once. The road behind me was empty. Streetlights glowed in their fixed circles, but between them was that thick, syrupy dark. I told myself, if you were being followed, you'd hear something. The problem was, I didn't hear anything at all. No insects, no distant TV through a window, nothing. I kept going. The second bend was narrower, with hedges on both sides that pressed the air closer to my face. The smell of damp leaves clung to me. That's when I noticed it. Every time I stepped under a streetlight, my chest tightened. Just slightly, just enough for me to notice. And when I stepped back into shadow, it eased again, like whoever was watching preferred the lights. Halfway down that stretch, I thought about turning back. But something deep in my gut told me, don't. Not because it was safer to keep going, but because turning around felt like stepping into someone's open hands. The last section of road before my building is the worst. Trees on one side, chain link fence on the other. You can see the end from the start, but it feels like it takes forever. I walked it with my jaw clenched, eyes straight ahead. I didn't run. Running felt like permission. When I reached the gate to my building, I felt my shoulders finally drop. I let myself in, locked the door, leaned against it. My apartment was warm, normal. I made tea. I even laughed at myself. Paranoia. Just an empty road. Until I went to the kitchen window. From there, you can see that last stretch of road. The trees, the fence. And under one of the streetlights, perfectly still, was a figure. Facing my building. I closed the curtain, but the feeling didn't leave. It's been with me every night since. I've never told anyone the whole thing. Not my mum, not the police, not even Rachel. And she was the one I left that night. I don't know why I'm telling you now. Maybe because if I don't say it, it's just gonna keep playing in my head every night when I'm trying to sleep. It started in the suburbs. My suburbs. Quiet streets, warm yellow porch lights, the kind of place where you hear sprinklers at night instead of sirens. It was just after 10 when I left her place. We'd had pasta, wine, too much dessert. She offered to drive me, but it was only a 15-minute walk. I told her I needed the air. The first block was fine. You know that soft hum streetlights make? That was the only sound. Then, halfway down the second block, I saw him. He was just there, leaning against a lamppost, hoodie pulled low, not moving, not smoking, not looking at a phone, just standing in a way that didn't fit. I walked past him, didn't look directly at him. I didn't want to be rude, but I caught the smell of him. Sweat, damp clothes, and something sharp, chemical. I kept going, and then I heard it. Footsteps. They were far enough behind that it could have been nothing, could have been someone else heading the same way. But when I slowed, they slowed. When I sped up, they sped up. I told myself to keep calm. My building wasn't far. But when I turned onto Oak Ridge, the street with fewer lights, I heard them close in. Not a lot, just a little. Enough to know they'd shortened the distance on purpose. You know that feeling when your whole body knows before your brain does? That's when it hit me. I wasn't imagining it. I took the shortcut behind the grocery store. It's faster, but there's just one flickering bulb over the loading dock. Every time it blinked out, I imagined him right there, arm out, grabbing me. I forced myself not to run. Not yet. I didn't look behind me as I went in, just slammed the door hard, hoping the sound would tell him I was inside and done for the night. But that's not how it works. Upstairs, my apartment felt like a hug. I threw my bag on the couch, kicked off my shoes. The TV remote was still on the coffee table from that morning. Normal. Until I saw the wet smear. It was faint, but it caught the light. A thin, dirty trail across my kitchen floor, from the balcony door to the hallway. I always lock the balcony door. Always. The latch was turned open. And then I heard it, the slow scrape of fabric against the wall, from the hallway. I took a step back toward the front door, phone in my hand, and that's when a man's voice, low, calm, too close, said, I liked walking behind you. He stepped out just enough for me to see the gloves on his hands. You didn't look back, he said. That made it easy. From the balcony, another shadow moved into the apartment. I bolted. I didn't scream. I didn't have the air for it. I yanked my front door open and ran down the stairs barefoot, every step echoing like a gunshot. They followed. I could hear them taking the stairs 2 at a time. The sound of gloves on the railing, shoes pounding after mine. I hit the street and ran. Turned left, then right, cutting through alleys, my feet burning on the cold pavement. Every time I turned, I saw them at the corner, still coming. I don't know how long it went on. 5 minutes, 10. Time broke apart. I saw lights ahead, a gas station. I pushed harder, lungs tearing, until I burst inside. The clerk froze when he saw me, and I slammed my hands on the counter, yelling, "Don't let them in." We locked the door. I turned to look through the glass. The street was empty. No one. I stayed there until the police came. They searched the streets, my apartment, said the balcony probably wasn't locked all the way, and that I must have startled myself. But here's the thing. Every night since then, I've heard it. Footsteps. Perfectly matching mine.
It was late November 2024 when I moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the 14th floor of an old brick building on 14th Street in Chicago. I'd been drowning in work, and the place was a rare find, affordable, with high ceilings, exposed brick, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city's jagged skyline. The building was a relic, built in the 1920s, with a creaky elevator and dim, flickering hallway lights that smelled faintly of mildew and cigarette smoke. I chalked it up to character and was just happy to have my own space after months of couch surfing. The first week was uneventful. I spent my days unpacking boxes, dodging calls from my boss, and getting used to the city's constant hum, traffic, sirens, the distant rumble of the L train. At night, the apartment felt like a sanctuary, the glow of streetlights filtering through the windows. But by the second week, something started to feel off. It was subtle at first, like a faint itch in the back of my mind. I'd catch myself pausing, listening, as if I expected to hear something that wasn't there. The air in the apartment felt heavy, like it was pressing against me, especially when I was alone. The first real incident happened on a Tuesday night. I was in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a faint scratching sound from the living room. It was soft, like fingernails dragging across wood, slow and deliberate. I froze, straining to listen. The city outside was loud, cars honking, a dog barking somewhere, but this sound cut through it all, too close, too intentional. I told myself it was probably a mouse or the old pipes settling. But my pulse was racing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and tiptoed into the living room. The beam swept over the hardwood floor, the sagging couch, the bare walls. Nothing. No scratches, no signs of pests. But as I stood there, I felt it. A cold, prickling sensation, like someone was standing right behind me, their breath grazing my neck. I spun around, heart in my throat. The room was empty. I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind rattling the windows, felt like a signal I couldn't decode. The next morning, I laughed it off, blaming the late-night coffee and my overactive imagination. But the feeling lingered, like a shadow I couldn't shake. The scratching came back the next night, louder, more insistent. It seemed to move, starting near the window, then crawling along the wall toward my bedroom. I lay in bed, eyes wide, tracking the sound as it skittered behind the plaster. It wasn't random, it had a rhythm, like someone testing the walls, searching for something. Then, a new sound, a low, breathy hum, like an exhale too close to my ear. I bolted upright, fumbling for the light switch. The room was empty, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. I checked every corner of the apartment, even the tiny closet, but found nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that I wasn't alone. The next day, I ran into my neighbor, Carl, a grizzled guy in his 60s who'd lived in the building forever. He was watering a sad-looking plant in the hallway when I asked if he'd ever heard strange noises. His eyes narrowed, and he gave me a long, uncomfortable look. "This building's got history," he said, voice low. "Not all of it's good. Keep your doors locked." When I pressed him for details, he just shook his head and shuffled back to his apartment. His words stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. That night, I triple-checked the deadbolt and wedged a chair under the doorknob for good measure. I tried to distract myself with a movie, but around 3 a.m., the scratching started again, this time from the ceiling above my bed. It was slow, deliberate, circling like something pacing. My heart pounded as I stared up at the cracked plaster. Then, a heavy thud, like a body dropping onto the floor in the living room. I didn't move. I couldn't. The air felt thick, electric, and that prickling sensation crawled over my skin again, stronger this time. I swear I heard a whisper, soft, garbled, like a voice trying to form words through static. It was so close I felt the air shift against my cheek. The next morning, I found a mark on the living room wall. A smudged handprint, too small to be mine, in what looked like soot. It was right where I'd heard the thud. I scrubbed it off with dish soap, but it left a faint, greasy stain that wouldn't budge. Unnerved, I called the landlord, a curt guy named Mike who sounded annoyed I was bothering him. He said the previous tenant had left without notice 6 months ago, and the apartment had sat empty since. Probably just the building settling, he said about the noises. Old places creak. But his voice had an edge, like he was holding something back. I started researching the building online. Most of what I found was mundane: permits, renovation records, but there was one obscure forum post from 2018. Someone claimed the 14th floor had bad energy, and that tenants never stayed long. The post was vague, mentioning sounds at night and a feeling of being watched, but it was enough to make my stomach churn. I told myself it was just urban legend nonsense, but I started sleeping with the lights on and a kitchen knife under my pillow. The noises didn't stop. The scratching became a nightly ritual, sometimes in the walls, sometimes under the floor, always moving, like whatever it was knew I was listening. The humming grew clearer, forming syllables I couldn't quite make out, like a name whispered over and over. One night, I woke to find my bedroom door slightly ajar, even though I'd locked it. In the dust on the floor, dust I hadn't gotten around to sweeping, were faint footprints, small and barefoot, leading from my bed to the door. I stared at them, my breath shallow, trying to convince myself I'd sleepwalked. But I knew I hadn't. The worst came a week later. I was jolted awake at 3:13 a.m. by a loud bang, like something heavy falling in the kitchen. The scratching followed, frantic now, coming from every direction: walls, ceiling, floor. I grabbed the knife and crept to the door, my hands shaking. The apartment was dark, the city outside silent for once. In the kitchen, a single glass lay shattered on the floor, the pieces arranged in a perfect circle, as if placed deliberately. The air felt wrong, heavy with that same electric charge, and the prickling on my neck was unbearable, like a hand hovering just above my skin. I heard the whisper again, clearer this time, a single word: stay. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, knife in hand, watching the shadows. They seemed to shift, not with the streetlights but independently, pooling in corners and stretching along the walls. By morning, I was a wreck. I called in sick and went to a coffee shop to search for answers. I found an old article buried in a local archive about a fire in the building in the 1940s. A family on the 14th floor had died, parents and a young girl. The cause was unclear, but neighbors reported hearing strange noises 4 years after. The article included a grainy photo of the family, and the girl's face, pale, unsmiling, made my blood run cold. I couldn't place why, but it felt familiar. That night, I packed a bag to stay with a friend. As I zipped it up, I noticed something on the windowsill, a small, folded piece of paper that hadn't been there before. It was yellowed, brittle, like it had been torn from an old book. Written in shaky, childlike handwriting was one word: stay. My hands trembled as I dropped it, and the scratching started again, louder, faster, like it was angry. I grabbed my bag and ran for the door, but as I reached for the handle, the lights flickered, and the whisper came again, right in my ear: "You can't leave." I don't know how I made it out. I stumbled into the hallway, the elevator mercifully opening as I jammed the button. The ride down felt endless, the air thick with that same oppressive weight. I crashed with my friend and never went back. I broke the lease the next day, and the landlord didn't even argue, he just refunded my deposit and hung up. I'm in a new apartment now, across town, but I can't shake the feeling. Sometimes, late at night, I hear it, a faint scratching in the walls, a whisper in the dark. And in my dreams, I see her, a pale girl with hollow eyes, standing at the edge of my bed, mouthing one word: stay.